Sure, but also there is a factor of metagame that is around the deck in a certain moment. And right now, of course, Amulet might rise in popularity, but Urza will definitely rise because of modern
100%.
challenge results. A couple of copies in top 8 already. Like this was the first opportunity for the deck to perform, and it performed super good. So imagine what will happen in upcoming months, as this deck right now is still evolving. The same with Urza. Urza was blue, red, Grixis, 4-color, 5-color, and probably the same was with Hogak at the very beginning. People tried to play without green, some white and red things to destroy enchantment artifacts like Ingochuer and so on. And when the deck finally got its, let's say, stock 75,
it's final form.
Out, right, final form. We have to ban it. And the same story might be with many decks that Amulet Titan is probably very stacked and you have just 4 cards to put in, but with Emry the deck is like completely new, and when you find out what's the final form, it might become just okay, we just have to ban it. It's too consistent, too powerful. And probably if this deck is very popular, Amulet will just have no room for operations. It just will either try to beat this deck and say, okay, this is not my best matchup, or it will be very popular very soon. But I don't think. I think that this Emry Urza deck is just more faster and more powerful. But it's like too soon to say too much about that.
I'll have to ask the Amulet Titan Masters out there what they think of defeating the Whir deck. They might have some tools, like they play with engineered explosives. So like explosives on 0 and then blow up all the 0-mana artifacts will prevent the paradoxical outcome.
The outcome of paradoxical outcome. And they have Pact of Negation, and there was a matchup in finals of this SCG. I don't know. I haven't finished watching, but I guess there was a modern match which was shown. Urza versus Amulet Titan. Probably 2 matches in a row, because in top 4 there were 3 copies of Urza Emry. Good sign for modern. What we might have in upcoming weeks. Yeah. So. I guess there's some bannings will come. Of course, this is like somehow always true, because something will happen eventually. But I think that artifact decks got just too much powerful tools, and looting decks are gone. So who else can stop them?
Yeah, who can? Yeah, which bad guy can stop the other bad guys?
Definitely Karn and Chalice for 0. So Eldrazi Tron is probably quite well positioned against this Emry deck, but I as I mentioned, I didn't play too much modern in recent weeks, and I always had very, very difficult matchups with regular Urza. So probably with Emry it will be again quite difficult. Like,
well, what are your problems? Because you're playing with Chalice of the Void and even Thought-Knot Seer to like take like some card out of their hand.
What was the problem against Urza?
Yeah.
It was the problem that beating them on the ground was almost impossible. I had probably 1 or 2 games that I had like turn 2 Thought-Knot into Smasher, and I would have lost without this member that I had also in hand. Because they play, alright, turn 1 play something, turn 2 Engineer, and they try to bring back the Breach, and they already stop my offensive, or they just play combo and gain 2, 3, 4 life per turn with already 1, 2, 3, 4 blockers. So this was the first problem. The second problem was that Urza is not stopped with regular just with Karn, because you still can tap artifacts for mana and activate Urza. Yeah. And if you play Sorcerer's Spyglass on Urza, this stops the ability of shuffling the deck and casting card for free. But Urza says that artifacts have tap for blue mana.
Yeah.
So if I stop them with Sorcerer's Spyglass, they still have artifacts. So to lock them from like all card advantage and so on, I had to do a lot of things. And another thing is that if I try to play Karn, I cannot defend it, because many creatures just are flying. They create just quite rapidly. They could create a couple of top tiers, and I just had to kill them one by one, because if they create 1, 2, there's nothing happening yet. But I have to minus Karn, they hit me for 2. I plus, and Karn is dead again next turn. So I plus it, have Karn on 6, but I have 3 turns to find out what to do. And I have to either play my whole hand, and play Breach and try to live this way, but they have a lot of time to play Urza, to play Pitting Needle, to destroy something with Blast Zone and so on. They just lock me out with Dumping Sphere that they could play main deck because of Wheel of Invention. So this deck is quite complex to play and very complex to play against. And as a tier 1 deck, this is just a not linear strategy. For example, Burn has a linear strategy that is very consistent and fast. And Urza is on the other side, just very, very difficult to lock the game plan. Because they have like many tools. They can attack you and grind you with Urza, make a top tier and life combo. They can make Urza top tier combo for infinite everything. But they also have a bunch of hate, like Cage, Dumping Sphere, and some other stuff, Pitting Needle. Blast Zone to get rid of some stuff. They can play all 5 colors. They have probably Teferi and Tezzeret to finish the games or bounce some other permanents, and Goblin Engineer to bring anything back. So anything you do, they can undo. And basically this matchup was difficult just because Urza was very powerful. Not any single reason, as I mentioned, just a lot of reasons together made this matchup quite complex.
Yeah, Urza certainly put the deck over the top. Whatever lock pieces you had before, Urza just unlocked them and could just be a source of card advantage for the rest of the game.
That's true. And yeah, whatever you lock, they can unlock. And Urza, whatever the top was, Urza put it on the over the top.
Yeah,
over the previous top. And how is what's your matchup against Urza?
Against Urza, it's not very good. It's very difficult to interact with Goblin Engineer that puts Ensnaring Bridge into the graveyard, so that undermines a lot of my counter magic. You know, I have Force of Negation. Can't Force of Negation a Goblin Engineer, and then once
can negation activation.
Yeah, can't negation an activation, so like maybe I can maybe I can Dismember the Goblin Engineer, and maybe Dismember is like okay in the matchup because it can hit Urza, but it's still not ideally what I want to do because it still blanks on a lot of their other cards, like, for example, hard casting Ensnaring Bridge, or Whir of Invention, and basically, you know, all their artifact cards. So it's very awkward. It's awkward to try to line up the right answer with their right threats. So that matchup, I think, is very awkward, but I've seen a lot of success against the Paradoxal Outcome deck because they seem much more all-in on Paradoxal Outcome, and that I can... It's sorcery speed, Force of Negation it. They sometimes are just all-in on that card, and I have a pretty good clock to race it. Okay. And also, at least the lists I've been looking at, and also the... as I've experienced in my own gameplay, they're running less removal. I'm not exactly sure what the reason for that is in their deck design, but maybe
they're still evolving, and maybe this is more focused combo deck, so maybe that's why they cut cards that they think they don't need, and at first place they cut cards that are not synergizing with anything else, maybe.
And because Urza had a lot of removal, like 2 Galvanic Blast, 2 Fatal Pushes, Collective Brutality, Assassin's Trophy, whereas the Paradox
Spellbomb?
Yeah, Pirate Spellbomb, which can be retrieved with Goblin Engineer, very annoying. And then re-retrieve with Goblin Engineer. You sacrifice to kill a creature, keep bringing it back. But not seeing that removal out of the Paradoxal Outcome deck, seeing like 2 Galvanic Blasts, 2 Fatal Pushes, and then that's about it. So my clock is a lot more reliably to stick on the board and pressure my opponent. So it's like night and day between those 2 archetypes for me.
Okay, interesting. And they already play Islands, but Urza was also playing Islands. You said that this member is not the best card, but you are much more offensive deck in this matchup, and I'm sometimes trying to take the control role, so this member is like the most important card, almost, like besides Con, because we just have to decide we have to kill Urza. We don't have evasion, we cannot kill them if they just drop a bunch of creatures on board. And just the way how the game looks, how one single turn look like with this Emry deck, this is not right, I guess, because they are like play like 10 artifacts, bounce them, draw 10 cards, play 10 artifacts, and this is like taking 15 minutes. It reminds me a lot of KCI, but without green, obviously. Yeah, so we'll see. We are like in day 1 of metagame with Emry, probably because everybody was playing. Maybe not everybody, but pro players and some other players from Pro Tours, players, for example, like Canister, that is playing obviously pro, but also he likes playing those decks in modern. They were like focused on draft, maybe some limited, maybe some standard, some Phantom Legends tournament, and right now probably this is the first big tournament, SCG and some modern challenge that we have after the release. And it turns out that this deck already is very powerful, and I don't think the reason is that nobody brought Artifact Hate. This is not the case. And what you're gonna do? What is your Stony Silence doing against Paradoxical Outcome? Probably not much.
Yeah, it doesn't even interact against it.
Yeah. And again, you said
well, I mean, it can interact, but like, you know, not to the effect.
Sure,
they can still just get value out of just bouncing all the artifacts back to their hand, and then replaying them, get value anyway.
And and just find some answer. I don't know what answer they might be playing, but for Stony Silence, they don't need any answer because nobody's playing Stony Silence, right? And one more thing is that Goblin Engineer was also, it was quite fast acceleration into combo, but this is also resilience, and Emry gives probably the same, because you put into graveyard, so you fill your graveyard for any reason, and then you just bring it back. Somebody destroyed, you bring it back. So you need Artifact Hate, you need Graveyard Hate, and you need Creature Hate. And if you have Counter Magic, wow, that would be swell, because you need to counter this Paradoxical Outcome. So again, you need to attack on many angles if you want to win against that deck. And 3 copies in top 4, this is like a lot. This is a lot.
And again, we don't know what the final form of this deck looks like. This is this is the training wheels Emry deck.
Yeah. Of course, all that we are saying are some sort of speculations, and it might turn out that either regular Wirza is better and people will just come back to Wirza. I don't think this is the case if you are putting such great results already. And another thing is that people might hate it out, but again, I don't think this is the case, because we already have printed very good Artifact Hates. Like we had Stone Science and Ancient Grudge, and Collector Roof is like probably the 3rd best. This is like very good Artifact Hate, and I don't think this is working well against that deck.
It hurts when you any deck that can bring artifacts back from the graveyard back onto the battlefield. Like that was the thing with Quark Clan Ironworks. You can put all the artifacts you want in the graveyard; they can retrieve them back
exactly
quite easily. And so we've got now both Wirza and Paradoxical Outcome, or any deck playing Emry and Goblin Engineer. They're going to be bringing the artifacts back from the graveyard. You know, destroy them all you want. If that card was beating your deck, it's going to come back.
That's true. And this is another, this is the consistency problem. And Emry being cast for 1 mana and 8 copies of various opals give the deck speed. And I guess there is people, Wizards might take a look and ask them for volunteer subscription to the ban list sometime. We'll see about that. But besides that, and of course this is like the week 1, day 1 of New Modern, but besides that, Modern was at very good health, I guess. Either Wirza was not too broken, it was like just a part of metagame. We'll see whether this Emry printing will change things a lot. Will they push it over the top right now and make the deck too consistent and too powerful? But I might say that I expect this deck to be banned some time in the future. But of course we'll see the final form, we'll see some results, and because we don't have too much new cards on upcoming will come in 3 months, half a year, and this is like too long to know right now what will be the outcome. So I think something artifact might get banned.
Well, let's say, for example, Mox Opal gets banned. Is that enough? Do you think would that slow this sort of deck down enough?
I think so, because why do you play this? Why do you play Mishra's Bubble? First of all, okay, sure, it draws your card. Second, it gives you some affinity, but nobody's playing affinity cards anymore. But it turns on Opal, and it gives you also something to bounce and draw more cards. Okay, so if we turn off Opal, I think that first of all your deck becomes much, much slower. if you focus your game plan around Mox Amber, like, okay, but this is completely different level of a game. And this deck has, for example, Weirza has a lot of consistency and a lot of power that you might think that if we ban Opal, nothing will change and this deck will be weaker but still very powerful. But take a look around. Take a look what happened to Dredge after looting ban, and just look what happened. For example, if we compare Gitaxian Probe to Peak, just one mana, one card that gives you mana, it's a huge difference. So I think banning Opal will hit those decks very hardly. I cannot imagine how strongly and what will be left after the banning, but I think Opal is on the list of cards to ban on the top 1, top 2 for like, I don't know, a couple of years. So again, this will be no surprise if this card will again be considered as a number 1 to ban, especially right now.